to tell you how desperate these people are, or not how desperate, but how hard up they are. I don't know what you call it. They have a whole episode dedicated to Jeff Hawkins. Jeff Hawkins, when he first spoke, was actually recruited by CNN to validate certain things I had to say when I had an interview in 2009, which is 8 years ago. Okay? 8 years ago. All right? And so 8 years later, okay, 8 years later, he now tells the same story about allegedly being wrestled to the ground. But now, 8 years later, he adds a hammer to the equation. A hammer was being waved in front of his face. Just literally out of whole cloth, this gets added to the equation in the Leah Remini production. In the production that he was involved in with me, with the UK production, right? He said they went to him because they wanted to, they wanted to make their story. They wanted to go after me, the English guys, because I was being somewhat neutral and objective about Scientology, right? So they went all the way to Seattle to ask Jeff Hawkins a bunch of leading questions. And of course, Jeff Hawkins, being the crepe hanger, ghoulish guy that he is, and the jealous guy, sort of full of resentment and resentment, says to them, they say, "Do you think Marty Rathbun's told all?" And he says, "Oh, no, not by a long shot." Of course, I watched that clip. I never was informed about it, but I watched it. I'm like, are you kidding me? This guy is the last person on earth. It'd be like going down to downtown LA and finding a guy pushing a shopping cart and saying, "Hey, does Marty Rathbun come clean?" That's the equivalent of how qualified he is to make a statement about that. The guy never stepped foot in my office in all his career in Scientology. Right? And so I'm just bringing this up to tell you who this guy is, who's now saying that people are waving, who 8 years after telling his story, he's now added the hammer to the equation, right? He literally is this dark rationalist, materialist guy, always has been, who never got a gain in Scientology. He's what you call in Scientology a no-case gain. Outside of Scientology, they have a word for it. It's called non-peaker, somebody who's incapable, apparently, of having a spiritually uplifting experience. And so they're like a chronic materialist by definition. They can't be empathetic towards any spiritual experience. That's Jeff Hawkins. He's a ghoulish character. So the other thing he says in this movie is that the guy asked him, "Was Marty Rathbun an okay guy?" He says, "Oh, no, Marty Rathbun was a predator. There's predators and victims, and he was always a predator," right? Which I'm watching and I'm literally laughing because I told you he got involved because CNN needed somebody to verify some facts and places and times that he happened to be able to do, and nothing else, right? Well, when he did his interview, the CNN called me and said, "Hey, guess what? This guy sung the praises about you. We've got this in case, the other side tries to, keep denigrating you. This guy has all these." I said, "Really? What do you have to say?" The guy ran me the tape. They literally have him on film saying that I was one of the most upfront guys and upstanding guys that he ever met in Scientology, that no matter how bad and rough things got, he always managed to treat you with... I mean, they literally have that on film, right? But now we're 8 years down the road. This is what this stuff does to you, this brainwashing that they go through, that Leah Remini sits and looks at the camera talking to former Scientologists saying, "You're a victim, you always were a victim, and you always will be a victim. Things have been done to you that shouldn't have been done, that you didn't deserve to have done to you." This is what becomes of them. I never thought of this before, but look at Tom DeVocht. Okay? Look at Jeff Hawkins. These people just degenerate over time into these ghoulish, creepy people who will literally just, they're so delusional, they will say things with all conviction and be filmed doing it, even though it contradicts stuff that they've said years before that's on film. It's remarkable. These guys literally live in a delusory world. I liked Tom DeVocht 8 years ago. This guy literally, I mean, I'm not even doing anything to him, and he's twice. He's shooting shots across my bow. Jeff Hawkins, I never said a discouraging word about. This guy entertains a film crew and trashes me. But here's the point. I know it sounds all personal, okay? Well, with me it is personal, but it's objective too, because like I said, these guys were on film earlier. Not expressing any of that. They're on film, you know, saying all they have to say, and now all of a sudden they're creating new things, experiences that conflict with the old ones 8 years later. They literally become delusional. The reason I bring up the reality thing is this. I saw a really good documentary on Trump about being this creation of himself, a creation of his own imagination. But it's not just him. It's all these Kardashians, it's all these Jenner, it's all these guys that make a living out of being reality people. The Duck brothers, what do they call the Dynasty Ducks? It's all the same thing. These guys aren't anything about, their lives in reality aren't anything that resembles too closely who they portray in these shows. They're acting out, they're projecting themselves, you know, how they want to be, you know, and our society is so screwed up that that line has been erased where we believe that we're seeing what we get. But this is firsthand to show you that that she's a prime example of somebody being a legend in their own mind and her being a figment of her own imagination. What you're seeing